obviously a trope that's been used extensively in landscape painting, and of course it's like the one way that the viewer sort of anchors themselves. But maybe you can talk about horizon, just
Horizon.
as a concept, yeah.
Wow, that's a big concept for me. It's something that's always been very important. On a personal note, it has a lot of autobiographical, personal, where I was be at my mother's house on the beach. Across the Mediterranean was France, and my father was in France, and I would every day look for a ship that would come in with him. So I always had this longing, which is a lot of where the work comes from as well. So that's on a personal thing. Then when I moved to this artist colony, we're on a bluff overlooking the ocean and the horizon line. And I did my very first piece, which is being revisited at the end of the month again, another version of it, which I'm calling Malibu Line. And what it was essentially, was that I would take these walks up the hill, and at that time I was doing dance, so I was very aware of the verticality of my body. And again, I'm always thinking about the horizon, and I noticed that the verticality of the human body against the horizon line forms a cross. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder if that's how symbols are formed. So I decided to do kind of a perceptual cross, and I dug a trench, filled it with blue pigment, and perceptually the blue of the pigment, you could see the ocean and you could see the horizon, you could see the sky, went all the way to the horizon to form a cross. So that's, and then I love also the concept of, I write horizon backwards, no zero, and I get into a whole mathematical thing with that. But the horizon line has always been interesting, and then of course now, when you look at us from space, there is no horizon, and that's really interesting as well. Like, how do we locate ourselves? We locate ourselves a lot by the horizon line.
It's interesting, sorry to bring up Helen again, but I'm very involved with her at the moment. And she talked to me, and it's actually a quote that I'm gonna print on the wall, where she said she's just absolutely fascinated by things that are appearing and disappearing, of things that are just outside of reach, things that are just beyond what you can feel and sense and understand and feel. And she said, I have no idea why I'm so fascinated by this, but it's what is. And I thought that was things you want to see and follow.
That's beautiful.
It's beautiful,
Yeah.
isn't it? And
Yeah.
and it's interesting that is also something that inspires you. That thing that is just beyond the horizon.
Very much. There is an astronomical term called particle horizon, and it means exactly that. That it's as far as the eye can see, and so that whole what is there, that it is it. So what I think of that, I think of the human as the question, right? The human is the one. We always asking that question. What is?
Because it's only humans that see the horizon. I mean, there is no such thing as a horizon in real life, right?
What do you mean?
Well, it's because it's based on human vision, right? It takes two eyes to look, and beyond which you cannot see.
Yeah.
That's the horizon.
Yeah.
Technically, I mean, I don't know, is it, right? It's, because it's not like you can go and capture a horizon.
No, you can never capture it.
Yeah, exactly, so it's something, it's a
Yeah.
border
Yeah.
that is not really there,
Yeah.
but that we perceive.
Yeah.
And the whole romantic spirit, it's
It's
all
very
about
romantic.
the horizon, this longing, you used it, and it's interesting that you bring that up as an influence too. Yeah.
Well, but it's interesting to think now that we can see ourselves from space,
Mhm.
right? Then, is there a horizon in space?
Probably.
No.
Well, there's the event horizon.
The event horizon.
But that's again, it's a human term.
Yes.
Beyond which there's no return. Okay, we're getting really deep in the waters here, Harry.
Is, you talked about the horizon, and you were talking about an event horizon. In that case, horizon means a limiter.
Mhm.
And is the horizon interesting because it represents a limit, or because it is there's the doorway to the next step beyond?
For me, it's the second.
The
It's
second.
definitely a doorway to the next step beyond, which means space, right, the idea of space, and I think
Well,
that's.
it's that go west young man, whatever, that drive to look for the unknown. As always, you look out at the images, you look out at the horizon, wondering, and that's what art and science is.
Yes,
It's very
yes.
much so, and we had quite a bit of debate in our team whether art is a knowledge system or not. I always say it's a knowledge system, just like science is a knowledge system. Scientists may disagree, but that's what it is. We're all just kind of trying to look behind the curtain. Okay, next. Yes.
I have a question, Lita. Did you always knew that you're gonna be an artist, or was there a process for you to kind of like find yourself and commit to it?
I always wanted to express myself. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a dancer, desperately, and I also wanted to be in theater. And then I was a poet, and I thought I was gonna be a poet, and then it was kind of a battle within me between acting and painting at the time, and then painting won in that I didn't want to be away from home all the time. Acting, you know, you're always out. So, but there was always this urge. But the visual arts, I really didn't know too much about the visual arts until I left home and went to London. And in London, two things happened. One, I saw William Turner's paintings, which were just amazing. And then for the first time I started thinking abstractly from my experience of London, which was this gray grid, but with these massive rectangles of green, all these, so I started thinking very visually, abstractly, color, and so that's what started it. But it was always something that was in those particular fields. But even decades later, years later, I didn't know I was an artist. I just, I was just doing what I had to do.
What was that turning point that made you feel?
Well, when people
on the right
asked me to be in exhibits and, the turning point to when I can't answer that question. There wasn't a turning point, it was, I think humans are artists, generally.
Connected to that statement,
I can't hear too well.
connected to the question that she had, you talk about the artist colony in Malibu that your mother brought you to.
Yes.
And I'm very interested in the history of Southern California and utopias. And could you talk a little bit about that?
About the,
artist colony, when it was, how old it was?
yeah.
When did you go? How long were you there?
Yeah, it was an unusual place. They call it the Other Colony in Malibu. It wasn't just artists, it was actors and filmmakers and musicians and writers. And it was a private space that it was owned by an Iranian, but run by a screenwriter from Hollywood that I became friends with. And people like Mia Farrow were there. I'm remembering, I can't pronounce his name, but the cinematographer for Ingmar Bergman. So there was a lot of more film. There was also a concert pianist. There was a couple painters, and so it was more of a relaxed kind of colony. We just all lived there in different places. It was a famous place because it used to be run by Ferlinghetti, and it was a coffee house initially in the 50s before the Iranian person bought it. And so people would still come and look for, I remember they would come into our living room and say, I used to play chess on this table. So it was of that period, when things were more beatnik, not really past that, but more that time.
And how old were you when you? How old were you when you joined when you?
22. Until, I think 32. I think I was there a while.
Formative years.
Would make, what?
Formative years.
Yes, I would say. But then I had a whole posse in Venice, and in fact, during that time, I had a studio in Venice. So, next to, you know, you name them and everybody was around the corner. So it was a great kind of, that was the real artist community, much more, you know, in terms of fine art. It was great.
Any more questions before we let you all go on with your lives? I have one last question. Of course, I have to have the last word. The human figure has made appearances in your work in quite a dramatic way. Talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, I remember the blue sculpture that your daughter did, or it's based on the
The-
body of another daughter, and, right, isn't it based on
No.
Jasmine's?
Oh, yeah.
Body, yeah.
Oh, you mean Isabel's work? Yeah, yeah,
Isabel,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
No, Jasmine's, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I'll answer.
You'll answer.
I do have two daughters. One is a sculptress and the other one is a dancer. And the dancer and I have collaborated ever since she was in the womb. I did a project at USC at the Fisher Museum called Basha, which is a Sanskrit term meaning image-bearing light. And I was out to here, by the way, she's out to here, about to have a child any moment. It was due yesterday. He was due yesterday. I was collaborating with an architect and a composer, Harold Budd, and my friends said, well, we have to start with the present moment. Let's shoot a picture of the earth on your belly and use that, and we projected it diagonally on a 40-foot wall, and my body with the earth in the middle looked like a galaxy. So then she was born, and she was the last image in the 1.5 hour visual film that we did. Not film, but slide projections. So that was the beginning. And then she ended up doing what I always had wanted to be, which was a dancer, and an amazing dancer, and quite loved in the dancing community here. And we started, I'm trying to think when was the first one, but we started collaborating. I did these large performances where she choreographed them, and then in the films, she is the protagonist in the film, which is the 25th century female astronaut. And also I've made sculptures of her body, of Jasmine's body. And that's why it's interesting. My other daughter, who's a sculptress, did a whole series on her body, but because they're sisters, they look alike, right? There's a certain similarity. And those sculptures of mine are all blue and represent, and I've had them in different parts of the world. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
That was my question.
Your question.